Hello, everyone. I'm Rajiv Bhuta, Vice President of Product Management at Walmart Global Tech Bangalore, responsible for building the platforms that power Walmart supply chain. We have a very interesting topic for today, and we're going to talk about learning e-commerce, the post-pandemic playbook. For today's session, it is my pleasure to have with me Jayendran Venugopal, Chief Technology and Product Officer at Flipkart, India's leading e-commerce marketplace. Jayendran leads product management, engineering, design, and user research, data science, IT security, infrastructure, and product operation teams at Flipkart. Prior to joining Flipkart, he served as SVP, Chief Product and Technology Officer at Myntra Jabong. He has also had stints at Yahoo and Amazon prior to that. Jayendran has a Master's of Science in Mechanical Engineering and Computer Science from University of Illinois. Jayendran, thanks for spending time with us on this session, and it's our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Rajiv. My pleasure to be here.
So, Jayendran, the last year has been a very difficult year for our consumers, for people in general. The e-commerce sector and overall the retail sector has stepped up to the challenge to serve the customers. So what has Flipkart observed in terms of consumer behavior? What has changed in the last 1 year? And there must have been a lot more new consumers across different tiers, across different segments that would have come and shopped on Flipkart. What have you seen change? How has the marketplace built trust among the consumers?
Absolutely, Rajiv. So what we saw as we started getting into the first unlock phases that started happening after the initial lockdown mid last year was increasing level of adoption from a much broader cohort of customers than what we have seen in the past. It was already the case that the lion's chunk of the new customer base that was coming on to e-commerce was actually coming from tier 2 and 3 cities and beyond. What we saw was that percentage went up, and there was an increasing and accelerating trend of adoption. This was to be expected because clearly coming out of the COVID, physical retail shops definitely had some challenges in the initial phases of the unlock. And the e-commerce as a sector stepped in to help fill some of the gap. And a lot of the customers who were waiting on the sidelines, maybe tentative about e-commerce, decided to try e-commerce for the first time, right? So that helped them to build confidence on e-commerce as a new retail channel for them. And when they saw the value proposition of e-commerce, which is around selection, value, convenience, everything that we talk about when we talk about e-commerce, some of those elements, especially things like convenience and safety, were amplified even more in the context last year. And that drove a lot of that cycle of adoption. So a lot of the analysts that look at the e-commerce sector had a particular growth curve, looking at how other markets have grown over the years, and using that as a guidepost to look at how e-commerce would grow in the country. And what we saw was that post that unlock period, the level of new customer adoption went up so much that the broad belief now is that it accelerated the country's e-commerce journey by anywhere between 18 to 24 months. In terms of timelines, right? So where we thought we would be at 2 years later in terms of new customers coming on to e-commerce, etc., we are already there for the most part as a sector, right? So that's what I would like to call out as one significant change that we did see in terms of consumer behavior towards e-commerce.
All right, nice. So while all this was happening, I'm sure it must have also been very difficult for your operations teams, whether it was the supply chain teams or it was your customer service teams, or it be even your marketplace sellers, right? So how did you go about managing the safety of such a large operation? I'm sure you went and brought on board a lot more sellers, you onboarded a lot more supply chain operations associates. So how did it all happen in such a short span of time during this difficult situation? And if you could talk about any role technology played in this, or any process innovation that helped you do this.
Absolutely. We'll talk about it, Rajiv. So if you broadly look at it, I kind of like look at it in this way, right? So we in our current business context, look at three stakeholders that we talk about, right? So one is the buying consumer, then the other one is of course the seller base, because we are a marketplace platform. Both are equally important elements of our business. And the next one, which is also a very important stakeholder, is the employee base, right? And employee base has multiple facets. One is the corporate headquarter employees. Then you have your call center employees, which is a very large distributed organization. Then, of course, you have on the ground frontline workers, like your e-cart workforce that actually goes and delivers packages, right? So we call them wishmasters, right? So the wishmasters that go there and actually deliver. Those are all important stakeholders, and ensuring the safety of each of these stakeholder types became very paramount for us, right? So I'll talk about each of these and in terms of how do we ensure the services are rendered in such a way that we take into account the context at that point, which was around a lot of uncertainty, fear, and all of that was there, right? And of course, new social distancing protocols and mask wearing protocols, all of that had to be adhered to. And how did we go about it? And where technology also played a role with some of that. I'll talk to all of that. So first talking about our buying consumers, right? So we very quickly actually prioritized essentials. Initially, of course, during the lockdown phases, essentials was the only item that we were able to allow to actually deliver, and rightfully so, right? To be able to restrict this very important channel to deliver something that is very critical for continuity for consumers and households. So during that time, we actually very quickly innovated on how do we launch our grocery vertical across a lot of other cities where we did not yet establish a grocery specific supply chain and warehouses and all of that, right? So grocery, until then, the way we had launched it was only using a grocery specific vertical supply chain and systems that we had built. So very quickly we innovated, brought some other ways of doing it. We partnered with other mega marts out there, which have a much more geographical distributed presence, to launch in new cities using a very different model, using very quick hacks and very clever hacks that our teams were able to come up with. So, and in terms of safety of consumers, what we did was we very quickly launched contactless payments at the doorstep, so we can avoid exposing customers to exchanging rupee notes or even cards at doorstep, right? So those kind of innovations help. And we ensured very clear protocols in terms of our delivery personnel, in terms of when they come and check in into our last mile hubs, scanning them to make sure their temperatures are within range, they're wearing masks properly and all of that stuff. Right. So I'll also talk about how did we go about educating them, some interesting technology tools we deployed inside our supply chain as well later. Coming to the sellers, the seller base went through a bit of a stress during that period, right? So clearly demand for certain verticals went down, and our seller base was having issues with operations, because even their personnel they couldn't get to show up because of lockdown protocols and all of that stuff, right? So a lot of that the services that we have for our sellers, like Flipkart Care Touch and premium support, etc., we extended the duration to cover for sellers so that they don't need to worry about them using up their Care Touch subscriptions or other things during a window when there was shutdown. So we did some lot of high touch protocols with our sellers, in the sense of high touch, in the sense of being on the phone, helping them as much as we can to help them tide through this, and that we did with our seller base. And with our employee base, we actually went into the remote working protocol even before the lockdown was announced, and much before that actually, right? So a few weeks before that, when we saw that the numbers were starting to go up. With the basically we enabled everyone to work from home. We very quickly provisioned VMs on the cloud and helped create that mobility to be able to have any sort of work profile to be doable from their home, right? Be it IT support, be it call center employees. How do you enable IP phone-based supports from their own locations? All of that we enabled. And with our eCart employees, who are a very, very key stakeholder for us, we did a lot of training. There was a lot of fear and uncertainty, and we organized a lot of education sessions. And we, in fact, deployed some technology tools as well. Video analytics tools we deployed, for example, to make sure that in any given floor space, the number of people that are there are what is allowed as per the social distancing protocols. And we even use computer vision video analytics to make sure that mask wearing protocols, when they were not being adhered to, are being flagged with the floor managers, and all of those things were also done. So these are some of the things that we did with these various stakeholder cohorts to help manage through that phase when there was a high level of fear, anxiety, and some apprehensions, and how do we continue to keep business running in that sort of the context.
Very nice. So let's talk a little bit about, you just mentioned how consumer behaviors changed, the move towards scaling up grocery very fast, partnering with a few mega marts that were globally distributed. That completely changes the paradigm of sourcing, inventory management, fill rates, and everything, right? Basket sizes probably were a lot bigger because people wanted to buy less frequently but more items, etc. So what are your thoughts on this? How did Flipkart's supply chain evolve through this? What role did technology play in that? And how has the journey been over the last 18 months during this time frame?
Yeah, see, I think when there were some unique challenges that also we had to solve for, right? So we had to make sure that our marketplace had continued to have fair pricing for essential products that were in demand suddenly. It could be pulse oximeters, it could be anything else that was essential, right? It could be your digital thermometers, it could be your face masks, N95 face masks, and so on, right? So we actually put in place some operation protocols to make sure that there was a high level of screening and scrubbing of any pricing action that was happening on the marketplace. Worked very closely with our sellers to make sure that they understood some of the pricing policies, both that platform very clearly wanted to maintain, as well as, in fact, the government also came into action and did some regulatory and policy-driven actions to make sure that the marketplace, the overall retail was behaving in the fashion that we expect it to behave, right? So some of these constructs we had to strengthen. We needed to increase our operational vigil and put protocols in place, SOPs, screening algorithms, etc. Right? So including algorithmic tweaks to make sure that some of these guardrails that we wanted to maintain on the platform were in fact being maintained. And when, for example, the micro quarantine zones started happening in the different unlock phases, we as a platform never had a sort of that sort of micro targeting capabilities for what we call as serviceability, right? When we look at serviceability, we generally look at it at a pin code level, right? Or some other granular level, and not at a very, very micro market level, like, okay, this particular residential building is quarantined, so we cannot take orders from there, or these 2 streets are blocked off, and so on and so forth. So how do you then make sure that, and in some cases, like there were some states that had different policies on what were allowed, what were not allowed. Different states were going through different stages of unlock eventually, right? And especially we saw that during wave 2. Because the wave 2 happened at different paces in different states, etc. The controls and constraints that were placed were different, right? So it was not a national policy that only essentials everywhere and all that, right? So how do you then deal with that sort of a complexity around changing landscape every day, right? Your last mile hub in any given location could be shut down tomorrow, could be open today, could be open day after tomorrow again, right? So how do you plan for forward-looking serviceability in certain destination areas? How do you manage SLAs? How do you manage consumer expectations when, for example, disruptions happen? How do you keep them informed that their delivery SLA could now be different because of some of these changes? All of that stuff, right? Including, for example, when you are doing merchandising on the platform, you want to make sure that you're not merchandising something to a customer who's, let's say, currently in a quarantine zone and is only allowed to buy essentials. How do you do all that using technology as a lever, right? Because you really cannot try to do it post facto, right? Like you cannot take orders and then say that I will let on the ground intelligence decide whether to deliver or not, or cancel it and return it. That would have caused massive level of chaos, right? Including customer dissatisfaction. Quickly reconfigure our systems and platforms and add new capabilities around doing micro targeting, being aware of zones, and different levels of catalog visibility that we needed to give for different microzones and so on. Those were all innovations that were done very, very quickly to enable this fast changing business landscape, right? So now all of that is coming into good use even now in scenarios that are not as, I mean, of course, we are still not out of the woods. We are out of wave 2. But so I wouldn't say we are back to business as usual, but at the same time, we don't have the same level of quarantine zones and restrictions now. And even then, some of these capabilities that we have developed during that situation, we are now able to use that to do even more refined and fine-grained way of doing merchandising to customers, retargeting, geography-based prioritization of certain types of goods and others, and so on and so forth, right? So those kind of capabilities that we put in place are coming in very handy. And of course, digitization of the country and conversion to digital payments has always been a goal for us. Clearly, the COVID period, when digitization was pretty much mandatory, right? We were not accepting cash for our what it would have normally been cash on delivery orders, right? We were only accepting UPI-based payments or other digital forms of payments using a link-based pay and so on, right? So those kind of things also help customers get used more and more to the digital way of paying, and we do hope that some of that will sustain and stay as we go forward as well.
Jayendran, let's talk a little bit about the teams that you manage, the technology teams, the product team, design teams, and some of the other teams that you manage. How was this year for them, and how did they manage through the year, especially during the festival time when a large number of customers come to the platform during the big billion days and right through the festival months?
Yeah, Rajiv. So I think the technology teams also had to adopt a very different way of working, right? As you know, technology teams thrive on doing a lot of joint problem solving, ideation, whiteboarding, and all of that as they look at, for example, architecture revamps or doing design and so on and so forth. So clearly the teams evolved. I mean, there are a lot of technology tools that were tried, Jamboard and a few other things that people figured out how to incorporate into their regular day-to-day workflows so that they could continue to be effective while working remotely. So that way, I think over a period of time, they adapted. And in fact, I would say thrived in this new environment because obviously, I mean, working from home also had its own advantages, right? Being able to be in a flow, be able to continue to do focused work, and of course, I mean, avoiding commute, all of that as well. But Big Billion Days specifically is very interesting, right? So what happens almost a month before Big Billion Day actually goes live is a whole series of what we call as non-functional requirements tests, where teams get together into war room-like settings, and they work pretty much day and night to get to scale the systems to the kind of throughput that we want, number of concurrent sessions that we expect in the upcoming event, and all of that stuff, right? Now, suddenly we were faced with doing all of that remotely, right? So when your regular MO of working during that period was through this sort of kind of war room settings and so on. So that was also very challenging, and we had to develop actually fairly elaborate playbooks, standard operating procedures and protocols. In the past, when we would have been able to manage some of that with institutional knowledge, and because we know that when the right people are in the room, they will be able to get together and quickly problem solve if there is a problem that comes during a sale. We could not rely on that, because I mean, you never know when somebody critical would go offline because of all reasons the power went off in their house, right? Imagine like somebody who's doing critical P0 support during a sale suddenly goes offline, right? So what happens, right? So especially in a fast-paced startup like Flipkart, you know that like we depend quite a lot on institutional knowledge and people getting together and solving things. So that was, of course, not an option that we could entirely depend on. So we did a fairly elaborate playbook. We documented all the degradation levers. We normally do that as well, even for other sale events, even before. And the Big Billion Day is usually very special, so we do some extra care there. But last year, I think we went really above and beyond in terms of making sure that everything is very clearly documented. Timeline-wise, step-by-step protocols were laid out for every team. We very clearly put in place kind of the escalation protocols within a team. We established different chat rooms where every team would have a 24/7 presence. And we had SWAT war rooms, central war rooms with representatives from all teams. All of that was running concurrently, and there was like an incident management protocol that was set in place. And me and my leadership team rotated and took turns running some of the incident management and SWAT rooms and all that. So it was just, honestly, I would say that some of the rigor and discipline was anyway a really good thing to put in place. The situation necessitated that and precipitated that, so that we did not have any option except to go to that level of detailing. And I think now it is very clear that even the upcoming Big Billion Day, the upcoming festive season, we will have to support from home, right? So that seems clear, because again, for employee safety, we have already announced that back to work for Flipkart is going to be only on December 1st. As of now, right? So we know that the work that we did and all the thinking that we did last time will definitely be helpful this time as well, and even beyond in the future as well, because that rigor and discipline we can only make resilience and other things better for the systems.
Jayendran, Flipkart is known for its India first products and India first experiences for the consumers, for the sellers. As you prepare for the post-pandemic world, what is it that we can expect from Flipkart, either through tech innovation, process innovation for India?
Sure, Rajiv. I think we even in the recent past and through these last year and a half of pandemic as well, we have continued to innovate for the Indian consumer. We expanded our vernacular offerings, for example, across multiple languages. Now we are available in 12 languages. Increasing the breadth and depth of our vernacular penetration, so we are able to speak to the customers in their own language of choice, is very important for us. We've also done a lot of interesting work on using voice as the medium of communication. Rather than type and touch. So because a lot of the next 200 million customers, as we call them, the new to internet and new to commerce customers that are coming from tier 2, tier 3 and cities and beyond, but even from metros and tier 1s, right? So we see that there is a very specific preference that they have for both vernacular and for voice, right? So they would much rather use, let's say, a voice assistant on the phone or use voice search rather than doing typing, right? So we did a lot of work, and we did, especially in the commerce context, we believe right now we have one of the best products in terms of word error rates and other metrics in terms of brand name recognition, intent recognition, and all of that. And that continued investment into these areas around voice, vernacular, etc. will continue. Recently, we also launched Shopsy. I think a lot of the folks would have seen that announcement. So we want to get into the space of social commerce, and we believe there are some really interesting opportunities there. There are a few interesting things that we are working on in that space that you will see soon as well. During the pandemic, we innovated on some new interesting video formats as well. Flipkart Video is a premium video destination within the Flipkart app, which is available without any subscriptions. And there we worked on some very interesting interactive video formats, which saw a lot of very good uptake from customers, right? So we saw very good uptake in DAU over MAU, like the stickiness kind of metrics that we normally track, right? So we will continue to invest in that space. And in general, the video space and the space around influencer-based commerce, live streaming-based commerce, etc., are very interesting for us. All of it falls under the larger social commerce umbrella, and we think that there is a lot of potential to develop it in very interesting and unique ways that will benefit the Indian consumer, and especially the next 1 million customers that are out there. So you will see us continuing to invest and innovate in these dimensions and many others as well that you will hear more about.
So Jayendran, on that bullish note, I want to summarize some of the learnings I am taking from this fireside chat. It was really interesting to understand how Flipkart and its technology teams, along with the operations team, quickly scaled up operations to serve essential items to the customer. All the challenges that were faced as rules, regulations of the lockdowns became clearer day by day in different zones, containment zones, etc., and how micro Flipkart went in terms of helping customers, whether it was in terms of everyday merchandise, essential items, or whether it was serving everybody they could possibly serve based on the lockdown rules. Also very interesting to understand and learn how teams came together virtually and how they've been working through the year to keep and allow people to shop 24/7. And then ending on this bullish note on where India is headed overall, how digital and e-commerce is transforming lives for everybody and making things easier on a daily basis. Again, I want to thank you for your time and appreciate all the discussions we have had today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rajiv. Thanks for having me on the platform and for helping us share some of the learnings that we have had over the last year and a half with this broader platform.